Okay. So the reason I do that is I kind of want to get a feel for how many years experience we have in the room. We kind of are all over the board here, which is great. I'm not really here today to tell you how to be a foreman. I'll tell you how to look at it differently. I found in my experience that the actual work isn't hard, right? Reading the prints, installing the material, that's not hard. The hardest part about being a foreman is dealing with people. People suck, to put it bluntly. You're not going to get the same person every day, or I love this one, when he's here, he's great. When he's here, he's great. I love that one. So basically, I want to talk about change. I want to talk about change the way we look at the job, change the way we deal with our crews, how we deal with people, deal with the customer. This class is heavily weighted on communication because at the end of the day, that's really what foremen do. They communicate a set of skills, a set of instructions to a crew, all right, and expect results. But we really fall short on communication. You're going to see when we get into it, all right? But basically, I'm talking about change. I love this quote from Leo Tolstoy, Russia to Right. Everybody thinks of changing the world. Nobody ever thinks of changing themselves. And that's really where change starts. It starts here. It starts with you. Okay? This is one of the greatest industries in the world. I come from a long line. A lot of my family are journeymen. My grandfather was a NECA contractor, Delaplane Electric, out of Highland Park, New Jersey. All my uncles, my cousins are linemen. This is one of the greatest industries we can be involved in, and we are going through one of the largest changes we have ever seen. Parts of the country right now, we have such severe manpower shortages that we can't find enough Jimmys and Joes and Janes to put on the job. They're just not there. We're working in an industry today that is, everything has to be done yesterday, the time restraints are tighter. If I were to ask you, is the NECA IBW team the best team in the country when it comes to this type of work? Is the IBW electrician the best trained, the best quality electrician you can get? I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. But we're living in the day where being the best doesn't really matter. What's the best watch on the market? What's the best watch on the market? Rolex. Rolex. How many of you guys have a Rolex on? None of you? You don't count. No. You've made a conscious decision to go with a less expensive watch that tells the same time. Our customers are making that same decision when it comes to their power needs. They want to walk into a building, they want to hit the light switch, they want to watch the lights come on. They don't necessarily give a shit anymore if that building has a union bug on it or not. And that's what we're up against. It's scary. It's scary, and when you look at it, the big picture like that, it's daunting. So what I want to talk about today are some skills that I feel can make us be better. Be better communicators, be better team builders, be better leaders, be better motivators. And if you can master these, I call them the 5 pillars of electrical foremanship. If you can master these 5 pillars, know your role, communication, team building, leadership, motivation, it'll go a long way in the productivity of your crews. Because your crews will want to be there. You're never going to get, you've heard the saying, you're not going to get blood from a stone. All right? If you tell someone that you need 100%, he already believes he's giving you 100%, he doesn't have another view, she doesn't have another view. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about change. It's just a different way of looking at it. When you shook your hand and you became a foreman, you crossed the largest bridge in our entire industry. When you took on that responsibility to become a foreman, you crossed the largest bridge in our industry. You just went from being a member of labor to a member of management. I know it doesn't always seem that you're treated that way. I certainly understand that. But a foreman is the management's representation on the job site. You speak for the contractor. You're managing. So let's start talking about that. We're going to talk about that as our role as a foreman. Okay? Before I do that, what is the goal of an electrical contractor? What's the goal?
Make money.
Profit. Sure. What's his objective? Quality's in there. I think you just said it. I just heard it. Did you just say
make a bigger profit?
No, not make a bigger profit.
Get it done in a timely manner?
That's all in there. But the goal is to keep and maintain a customer base, which is becoming harder and harder to do today. keeping and maintaining a customer base. That's our objective. That's our objective. That's what we're going to try to do. And as management, what 3 broad topics do we ask our foreman to manage? What are 3 things that you're asked to manage as your role as a foreman?
Time, material, and labor.
Damn close. Men, material, time encompasses all. There's one more major thing.
Cost.
Cost encompasses all. There's a cost put on everything.
Information.
Now, what are those things that you ride up and down, or you
Figure.
you might have to rent it? Equipment. Time, material, equipment. These 3 broad topics are what we really ask our foreman to manage. Okay? So what do you think the three major construction cost factors are? The 3 most expensive things we deal with.
Labor. Equipment.
That's right. You guys are already in charge of the 3 most expensive things that make up a job. The men, the material, and the equipment. Out of those 3 things, which one does the foreman have the most control over? Labor. Material is set by the market. Equipment is set by a market. The only thing that's not set by a market is labor. And it is one of the hardest things to master and to deal with. Why? Because you're dealing with people. You have 20 people on your jobs, that's 20 personalities. That's 20 home lives. That's 20 problems. And they're all different. And it's up to you as a foreman to balance that throughout the day and still bring that job in on time, on budget, hopefully for a profit. In my opinion, the foremen are the most important person in an electrical contractor's company. They're the most important people in this industry because you're the constant link between labor and management. You're the constant link. You're with the crew every day, you have a relationship with labor, you're a member of an IBEW local, and at the same time, you're also representing management. I mean, you are the linchpin, you are the keystone to this whole ball of wax moving forward. And no matter what's happening out here with labor and management, if it's negotiations, they're not seeing eye to eye, or it's agreement, it's still your responsibility to keep that job moving in a positive, productive manner. And if anyone ever tells me, we're going to talk about costs later, but if anyone ever tells me they became a foreman for the money, I'm going to tell you you're absolutely crazy. You have to like this. It's not worth the money, I'll tell you that right now. The hours you put in. When I was a journeyman, it was awesome. You show up to work at 7, you go home at 3:30, and you repeat. When you're a foreman, you might show up an hour or 2 hours before the job, you stay an hour afterwards, and the prints come home with you. Do I have enough material? Do I have enough manpower? What am I going to do with these guys? What if he doesn't show up tomorrow? It's a constant juggle, and it's constantly on your mind. And what I want to talk about today is starts dealing with those types of problems. Okay. So back to change. How do you guys have the most impact on the outcome of the job, right? Supervisor, your direct cost impact is 85 to 95% of the job, which means a great foreman can take a job that's not set up to make a lot of points and turn it profitable, and a bad foreman that can take a job that's set up to make 20 points and run it right into the ground. The production team as well. Look at what you guys make up. The management, they only have a 10 to 20% direct cost. They have a lot on the indirect side. They set it all up. They did the estimate. They did the bid. They got the job. Now it's up to you guys in the field to bring it home, to be profitable. Okay? You're also going to end up as this man in the middle. You're going to end up on a day-to-day job. You're going to have to deal with the IBEW, vendors, the customers, other subs, the shop, any inspectors coming onto the job, the rank and file. You're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. Now add on to the top of that a new classification. Do you guys work with CWCs here in Ohio? Another classification that isn't indoctrinated or didn't come up maybe through the apprenticeship program and isn't indoctrinated into that union mentality yet. They might have a specific skill set they're good at, and that's it. It's just something else to weigh on top of everything else that you're already asked to do. You wind up as this man in the middle. You're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions on every single day. And it can be a lot to handle. It can be a really lot to handle. A lot of you guys in here are young. I had my opportunity to run my first job as soon as I topped out. And I had, in my crew were guys that were just getting ready to retire, and they had run every big job in our local until this point. This was their last job. And it's intimidating to tell someone what to do when they've been an electrician longer than I've been alive. And I'm supposed to tell them what to do. Well, that's either going to go two ways. It's how you deal with people that are going to defend that outcome, which we're going to talk about. How you spend your time is different as a foreman. It's not all technical anymore. It's not all technical. There's paperwork. There's RFIs, or requests for information. There might be change orders you have to deal with. The paperwork, the job logging, keeping the time, keeping track of the time. It's different. It's a big change. In your packet there on the top thing is something that's called Duties of an Electrical Foreman. Now I give this to you because one, it's a pretty good outline for this class. And number two, is this is pretty interesting. So this came out in the early 2000s, I think around 2004. And it wasn't, yeah, it says NECA on the top of it, but it was really a collaboration. This was put together by NECA contractors, foremen, IBW business managers, some chapter managers were involved, and a collaboration of basically what is the job description of a foreman in the unionized electrical industry. All right, this is what they came up with, right? And I'm not going to sit here and read through every one of these numbers. A couple of key points that I think basically is the first one. How many of you guys work for a contractor that has company policies? You come to the contractor, you sign on to the company policies. That's really going to set up your role as a foreman. You're going to follow those company policies. The other thing that sets up your role as a foreman is a collective bargaining agreement. Have you guys all read your collective bargaining agreement? Yes, no, maybe? Show of hands who hasn't read the collective bargaining agreement. So you've all read it. I'm getting confused here. If you haven't read your collective bargaining agreement, raise your hand. Guys, trust me, you're not the only ones. I gave this class 26 times last year, and they don't read the collective bargaining agreement. The problem with not reading the collective bargaining agreement is there's a clause in every collective bargaining agreement. It's called the Management's Rights Clause. And in layman's terms, it basically says if it's not set forth in the agreement, it's management's rights to do so. So, say you have a rule in the agreement that says, I'm sorry, that was a New York City call. No cell phones on the job. Okay? Now, it can't be a company policy to have cell phones on the job. You can't have cell phones on the job, right? If that's not in there, and Romanoff Electric doesn't want cell phones on the job, they have the right to make a company policy that says this. So you got to know what working rules are or are not in your collective bargaining agreement. And that changes from local union to local union, all right? Understand the company policies and carry them out consistently. Rank and file can smell favoritism like white on rice. And it really comes out with stuff like overtime, specialty jobs, and all the good work, or whatever the case may be. You want to make sure whatever you're doing, if you're going to discipline someone for being late, you have to discipline everyone for being late. It's about being consistent, okay? We're going to talk more about that later. Remember that you are a member of management and your first responsibility is to the company. If you act as you would want to be a foreman to represent you, if you were the owner of a business, and if you observe the labor agreement, and are not likely to run into any controversies or problems. However, you do have labor problems. Do not fear threats and accusations, but maintain the position you believe is right until otherwise instructed by your supervisors in the company. It's your responsibility as a foreman, whether you agree with those company policies or don't agree with those company policies, to enforce those company policies, because you are representing management on the job site. If you have a job with a steward on it, you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with that steward. Stewards are on the job for the IBW. I was a steward at one time to make sure that the agreement is being upheld on the job site. That's what they're there for, okay? And the IBW reserves the right to place a steward on any job they wish. Plans and specs, we're going to go over that. Code, look, you should have a broad knowledge of the code, but you don't have to know the code inside and out. There's probably a code book in your job training. Relationships with other trades and owners representatives, we're going to talk about that. Manpower planning and scheduling. I'm assuming most of you, how many of the foremen that have been a foreman for a while, are you allowed to call for your own manpower? Does it go through the shop? Through the shop. Supervision of employees. We're gonna have a long discussion on that here in a little bit. But when it comes down to that supervision of employees, it really comes down to the consistency part. Being consistent and knowing when to use which leadership style, and knowing when to be affirmative and when to be a little bit more liberal. Okay. So I just wanted to give you that. It's a great outline of this class, and it's basically what the industry thinks your job description as a foreman should be. Okay? I agree with most of it, not all of it, but I think you guys should have it. This is what the industry is telling you that your job description is. Okay? So what's expected of us as foremen? Well, obviously you have to have the technical skills. Right? You have to have the ability to perform a group of tasks that are specific to a trade, in this case, electrical. Right? But more importantly is the human skills and conceptual skills. The human skills. The ability to work as a team member and team leader, and to build a cooperative team effort within the crews that we supervise. And our conceptual skills, the ability to visualize the entire project as a whole, break it down to individual tasks, and then put the whole piece of the puzzle back together in proper sequence. Technical skills, I'm not really going to read this. We know what the skills of our trade are. Okay? Our human skills. Make production and team assignments equally and with reasonable production expectations. Providing an opportunity for production team input on work, methods, and other suggestions. When you're a foreman, don't feel you have to do it all yourself. The greatest thing about our industry is you can learn something new every day. And it might be a first-year apprentice or a summer helper that was on another job that saw the way they were doing it that seemed a little bit better, a little more efficient. Don't be so closed-minded. Don't be scared to reach out to your crews for suggestions or help. The ability to work out assignments and production changes for factors such as more time, more work, less manpower, more manpower, etc. We got to be flexible. We have to be flexible. The ability to tactfully check the production team's understanding of work methods and assignments. Our people need a report card. They need to know when they're doing something right, just as much as they need to know when they're doing something wrong. We are very quick in this industry to be negative or say that son of a bitch is lazy, or he never shows up, or he doesn't do anything. And we're very slow to praise. And when you just focus on the negative, it's called negative reinforcement. We're going to talk about that when we do motivation. It doesn't go very far, as you can imagine. We got to be coaches. We have to teach. We have to share what we know with the people coming up behind us, just as people did for us as we were coming up, right? And the ability to train and develop production team members. That's a big part of it. We're coaches. You're not just a foreman, you're a coach, you're a teacher. And then our conceptual skills, the ability to plan, the ability to schedule, the ability to coordinate with other crews, owners, crafts, general contractors, project managers, the ability to expedite materials with suppliers and vendors. Now this is slowly changing. When I was still a foreman, for the jobs that I ran, they were mostly larger jobs, hospitals, data centers. I was able to order my own material. Now it seems the trend is you call an expediter, or you call a material handler at the shop, or you fax in your material order. How do you guys handle that right now, just so I have a clue? Is anyone calling in their own material, or you calling the shop? Shop? Vendor. You guys are dealing with the vendor, great. Most people calling the shop to get their material? Okay. The ability to read, interpret, prepare reports for documentation, cost control, the paperwork side of being a foreman. The ability to assess productivity and develop alternate work methods to improve productivity, which we're going to talk about. Productivity is one of these words that just gets thrown around our industry. If you guys ever have the opportunity to sit on a negotiating committee, either for the local or on the management side, you're going to hear this word 100 times. Right? That's a big word in our industry. Productivity. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So in short here, this role as a foreman, you've gone through a major change. And for you young guys, it is a major change. When you decided, or you took your first job as a foreman, you crossed the largest bridge in our industry. You went from a member of labor to a member of management. Now you have to deal with them by their buddy or by their boss. How do you handle that? How do you handle that? You're always going to end up as this man in the middle. You're going to get pulled in 1,000 different directions. The local's going to tell you this. The shop's going to tell you this. Your crew's going to tell you this. You're going to get pulled in 1,000 different directions. You're going to become a juggler. You have a lot of stuff on your plate. And you still have the ultimate responsibility to bring in that job on time, on budget, hopefully for a profit. You made the change from technical to supervisory. Your skills have now changed from technical to human and conceptual skills. So I'm told that in this room are the very best of the best that Local 8 has to offer. So we're not going to spend any time on the technical side of this industry. But we are going to spend a lot of time on the human and conceptual side of this industry. Okay? Are there any questions? Comments, concerns? Okay. Oh, I didn't myself. We're going to go now to communications, and I'm telling you right now, if you guys forget everything I say today, pay attention to this next part of the class. If this class could be anything else, it's a communications class. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it is that a foreman does. They communicate. They communicate to the crew, they communicate to the shop, they communicate back to the hall. That's what we do. And we fall way short on it. You'll see. So I have a short video here I like to start communication up with. I think it's funny. I hope you guys do too.
Das hier ist ein Mindset-Talk. Das hier ist das Wichtigste, wie wir das wissen müssen. Das Überlebenslehrer.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you? Hold up. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So if any of you guys are sailing off the coast of Germany, I'd be extremely careful, because I don't think the Coast Guard is going to help you out. All right? So to start this off, I'll tell you what, this is the only test I'm going to give you. It says 6 minutes. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to complete this. I need you to answer as many questions as you can in these 5 minutes. So William's going to help me pass these out. Keep them face down until I tell you to go, because I need you guys to all start. Don't cheat, don't look at it. Keep them face down. Only test I'm going to give you. All right, be honest. I'll tell you what, walk around the room. How many people have seen this before? I was going to say, because normally it gets funny. But be honest, how many people did I get?
Just real quick.
Read number 1 for me.
We strongly recommend obtaining the best test results possible. Reading the entire test first before answering individual questions.
Now read number 24.
Now that you have finished reading carefully, you will only sentence number 2.
Not gonna lie, all honesty, you guys did very well. I always get some people. And the reason is, first thing you have to understand is, on a whole, people don't read. People do not read. I probably get 80 to 100 emails a day. I'll be honest with you, I don't read them all. I might read that subject line. I'm sure I miss important information. How many emails get a day? I read them all. When you worked, how many emails did you get a day? Did you read them all? People don't read, right? On a whole, people don't read. That's really why I do this. Plus, I did something there. I put a time restraint on it. I told you to answer as many as you can, right? And when you do that to people, they tend to rush. And there's one thing that never makes an estimate or a bid. What do you think that is? The rip out and redo. There might be some leeway in there for a mistake, but I doubt it. Not in the environment we work into today. We need to do it right the first time, right? The other thing that you have to understand about people is they perceive things differently. Can you hand those out for me? Just keep this, leave one up here. people are going to perceive things differently. So Will's handing out a piece of paper, it's got a picture on it. When I tell you to, I want you to flip it over, and I want you to tell me the first thing you see. Okay? Okay. So flip it over, it goes this way. What's the first thing you see? Shout it out to me. What do you see? What do you see?
Young girl.
What do you see? Old, young, hot, not?
Young.
What do you see? Old lady. How many people see the old lady? How many people see the young lady? How many people can see both? How many people can see any lady? People perceive things differently, right? What is one of the biggest things we do in this industry when we lay out a job to somebody? We think we're Picasso. What do? We draw a picture. There you go. Do that. We don't ask them if they see the same thing we see. We draw, look, I get it. If it's a one-line diagram, I get it. You know, do that. But I've seen foremen that think they're electrical engineers and draw these huge things, right? People are going to perceive things differently, right? So you got to keep that in mind. On a whole, people don't read, and people are going to perceive things differently, okay? It's two of the biggest things you have to understand about communication is every person is going to perceive things differently. You can't assume that just because you see, because here's what happens. When you're a foreman and you live, breathe, eat, drink, and sleep those prints, you know those prints inside and out. And in our conscience, we make assumptions that everyone has that same knowledge that you have. You have the whole picture. They only have what you're giving them. Okay? They're not studying the prints at night. They might not understand the full picture. And I'm not saying they have to. But we have to make sure that this happens. If I were to ask you to define communication, how would you define it? How would you define communication?
Telephone?
Yeah, all right. How would you define communication? Relaying a message. Define communication.
Relaying information between two people.
Between two people, very important. How would you define communication?
Okay. Relaying information between two people.
You can't copy, that's cheating. Or a group. This is how, not just me, but Mr. Webster defines it as well. And I think it's simple. Yet this very rarely takes place. There has to be an exchange of understanding. They have to be picking up what you're laying down. So often, who's worked for this foreman? Just do what I said. Have you guys worked for that guy? I have. Let me show you what happens when you work for that guy. Take your time test and pick it up. And just do what I said. Fold the paper in half, tear the top right corner. And just do what I say. Fold the paper in half, tear the top right corner. Fold the paper in half again, tear the bottom right corner. Fold the paper in half again, tear the top left corner. Fold the paper in half again, tear the bottom left corner. Fold it in half again, tear out the middle. You're not going to be able to do that. Open them up. You all just heard the same exact set of instructions. And how many people are here? 40-some people? Hold them up. They're all different. And we've all worked them. Hopefully that person isn't sitting in this room to just do what I said. I took a communications class in college, and you just had to tell someone to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You guys should have seen it. It was hysterical. When you get down to the nitty-gritty, you just do what people say. You're amazed at how much stuff you leave out. You're amazed at how much stuff you leave out. But this happens every single day on almost every single job in the country. The exchange of understanding is not taking place. If you forget everything else, remember that. If you could just make sure that the exchange of understanding happens, we would have made leaps and bounds in this industry. All right? But it's hard. The exchange of understanding is hard. We're going to do another exercise. It's not, what's the most important part of communication?
The understanding part.
What do you have two of on your head and one of on your head? Is it 2 ears, one mouth, right? People don't listen. I thought I was a great communicator, guys, and then I got married and realized she has no clue what she's talking about. It's extremely difficult. I need, give me 4 volunteers. If you don't volunteer, I'm all right, I got 1, I got 2, I got 3, one more. Can't make me 10. 4, perfect. So you guys stand up. You guys remember the game telephone? Pass it on, down the line, whatever you want to call it. Well, we're going to do that. But we're going to do it pertaining to our industry. I have a video that's going to pop up here. One of you stay in the room, and you 3 are going to go out in the hallway. And now just hold on. I'm going to play it 1 time. Listen to it. You can't take notes because that would be cheating. Because I guarantee when your boss tells you something on the job, you're not like, hold on. Right? So we're not going to cheat. And then you're going to listen to it, and then you're going to pass it on to him. He's going to pass it on to you. And you're going to pass it on to me. We'll just see how close we got. All right? So why don't you guys step out here? Don't leave. Don't leave. I'm going to shut the door because there can't be any cheating. And I'll come get you. All right, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, everybody else, you got to be extremely quiet. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not easy. I want to make a point. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
1 time. Here we go. Shh.
We're going to have an important safety meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the large room just west of the line. I need you to go to Construction Safety Services and pick up 2 large safety harnesses, 2 shock absorbing lanyards, and 1 rebar hook for the demonstration at the meeting. Thank you for taking care of it.
Do not fuck this up. All right, I need one of you.
10 a.m., large buildings.
Thanks for volunteering, guys. I appreciate it. All right, boss has something he has to tell you.
Okay, we're going to have a safety meeting tomorrow at 10 in the large conference room in the west wing. We need to have 2 harnesses, 2 lanyards, and 2 hooks.
Perfect. All right, one more.
Oh, that's supposed to go.
Now you got to tell him. Hope you were paying attention.
We're going to have a safety meeting at 10. We're going to need, oh God, I already butchered it. In the west meeting room, large meeting room, we're going to need 2 lanyards, 2 harnesses, and 2 hooks. How bad?
You'll see. All right. Now you're going to tell him.
Okay. We're going to have a safety meeting at 10 in the west large meeting room. We're going to have 2 harnesses, 2 lanyards, and 2 hooks.
What do we got going on tomorrow?
Our safety meeting at 10 in the west room, 2 large hooks. That's all I heard. I was trying to remember.
All right, listen. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Appreciate your help. Thank you. So that's hard on purpose, right? But I want you guys to imagine how many times something like that happens every day. You guys want to hear it? You guys want to hear what it really is? Sure.
We're going to have an important safety meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the large room just west of the line. I need you to go to Construction Safety Services and pick up 2 large safety harnesses, 2 shock absorbing lanyards, and 1 rebar hook for the demonstration at the meeting.
The good news is we're going to have 2 hooks. That's the good news. They're just there. They're just there. Nobody went to Construction Safety Services. Anyway, that's hard on purpose. I used to make it even harder because I used to do it with something that had nothing to do with the electrical industry. I used to tell you to go to the store and pick up 4 pounds of flour, 2 pounds of sugar. We made a cake, basically. In fact, I was thinking about food a lot. But anyway, this type of activity, it happens every single day on the job site. And it's happening and we don't even really stop to think about it. We're not even really realizing it. And all this is doing, I'm just trying to bring you to light to let you know this is out there. We got to start thinking twice about this. But the real reason communication is so hard is because there are barriers to communication. And most people have no clue about these barriers, right? So basically, physical barriers, obviously super easy to identify, super easy to reduce. Somebody's jackhammering next to you, obviously it's not a conducive place to communicate. Or somebody's welding above your head, or there's a fire truck. So this class was really developed for New York City. How many people here, you guys ever been to New York City? There is a fire truck, an ambulance or police car that goes by every 3 seconds. And I swear to God, these guys have grown up in Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan. It's like the first fucking time they've ever seen a fire truck. They're like my 3-year-old, like, look at that one! And they're not paying attention, and the person just keeps talking. It's amazing. Then sender barriers. These barriers lie with the foreman, or the person doing or initiating the communication. And then the hardest to reduce, the hardest to identify is listener barriers, because they lie in the mindset of the recipient. For example, I'm up here talking, and I'm making eye contact with you. I assume you're paying attention. I don't know. I have no way, I'm not in your head. You guys should be thinking about, am I going to, what kind of stuffing am I going to make next Thursday for Thanksgiving? Or, God damn, my in-laws are coming over, or whatever the case may be, right? So let's talk about these. Listener barriers. We're going to start with the hardest one. Listeners jump to conclusions. How many times have you been laying something out of the job, or talking to a buddy, or talking to a friend, or talking to a spouse, and they just jump to right where they think you're going? Happens all the time. Listeners tend to hear what they want to hear, not what you said. Listeners tend to reject any message that contradicts their beliefs, their assumptions. Kind of goes back to that old adage, you never talk about religion or politics in a bar. People are passionate about that stuff. And if they feel strongly about it, the second those words come out of your mouth, they've shut everything else off. Listeners have emotional problems that cause their mind to be preoccupied. You know, we like to think that our home lives don't come onto the job. They do. You know, someone might be dealing with a sick parent, maybe a sick child, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they're dealing with alcohol or drug dependency. I don't know. You don't know everything about the private lives of everyone on your job. Okay? Listeners do not ask questions to clarify when they do not understand the point. Next time you guys, how many of you guys do your toolbox talks? Once a week or whatever. Right here in front of your group. I guarantee if you ask, are there any questions? You goose it. You know why? It's not that they weren't paying attention. It's that they don't want to show what they don't know or don't understand in front of their peers. On a whole, in large groups, people don't ask questions. Some people have a fear of public speaking. Some people, they don't even know if what they're supposed to understand. They won't ask questions to clarify what they don't understand. Especially young journeymen that just hop out of their time. Because obviously what happens, you go from being a 5th-year apprentice one day, don't need to know anything, to a journeyman the next day, you're supposed to know everything. Right? That's the perception that's out there. We all know that's not true. Listeners may nod their head in agreement when they actually don't agree, and they have no clue. They're just, they know you're talking and they probably feel like, I have no clue what this asshole said. Sender may not be, these are sender problems with the listener barriers, right? The sender may not be able to identify any listener resistance. You're talking, they're making eye contact, they're nodding their head. You assume that they're picking up what you're putting down. Sender may be aware of the listener resistance, but have no clue what to do about it. I know this person's not listening to me. What am I going to do about it? Sender may dislike or be disliked by the receiver. That's going to happen. You know, this is the construction industry. We're not always going to hold hands. We're not always going to sing Kumbaya. There are going to be people on the job site that are going to resent you. They might not even know you. They're going to resent you for the mere fact that you're a supervisor or you're a foreman. Okay. Sender may not want to risk a discussion of the listener resistance. I don't care what you say. Just do what I say. Let it know. The listener feels resistance and doesn't understand why. This is a big one. Because as foremen, we don't always have great days. Right? Our home life comes on the job with us too. So when I was in high school, my parents used to tell me all the time, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Right? How you come across to someone. Like you're curt or you're short or you seem antagonistic towards that individual. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you deliver it. Your body language, your tone, all that comes into play, and then all of a sudden your guy's like, well, who the hell pissed in his cornflakes? What did I do to him? Right? Sender barriers. Sender has not decided or specified precisely what the listener's response is expected. What I mean by that is, when you're going to lay out tasks to a crew, do some thinking about, say, what problems might these guys have with this? What issues might they have? And then you can prepare to, if there is a question or response, to answer it. Sender incorrectly assumes the listener has adequate knowledge to understand the message. I'm going to assume if you're a journeyman wireman, you can wire a three-way. I'm going to assume if you're a journeyman wireman, you can bend a 90. I'm going to assume if you're a journeyman wireman, you can bend a 4-point saddle. But I don't know. Sender uses words, an example, unfamiliar to the listener. This is great. I was I must have been a first-year apprentice, and we're working at Rutgers University, and we had a big boom going on at this time. And I was teamed up with this guy from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You guys ever work with anybody from Baton Rouge? Do you know the movie, Adam Sandler's in it, he plays football. Bobby Boucher, what's it? Waterboy. You know Farmer Fran? Maybe died on right? That's exactly what this guy sounds like. So we're running 2-inch conduit, and he up in the lift, and he yells down to me, "Give me a mini!" Now keep in mind, I was as green as the grass is. I had no clue. I'm like, "A what? Give me a mini!" I'm like, "Where's that at? Next to the water? We're going to sweat some pipes in?" I thought he was messing with me. He picks this thing up. He fires it down at me. I pick it up. I said, "Oh, you're a cowboy. Why did you say that?" He was asking for a mineral app. If you guys ever work in Jersey, don't ask for a mini. They're called cowboys because it's a cowboy. Right? If you ever work in Local 3 in New York City, they're called Mae Wests. I learned that. That was tough. But people use different words and example in different parts of the country. Like I was probably a 4th-year apprentice, so I understood what the hell Kingdorf was. I had no clue. It was Strud. Sender continues talking when the listener's attention has been distracted. Like I said, in New York City, the damn fire truck goes by, Foreman just keeps talking. The sender may say the message in a way that turns the listener off or even antagonizes the listener. Like I said before, sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it or how you deliver it. The sender may use words that have dual meanings that confuse the listener. I don't read out this book that often, but this is pretty interesting. One second. The 500 most commonly used words in the English language have 14,070 dictionary meanings. They are often going to mean different things to different people. That's crazy. The sender uses more words than necessary to convey a message. I call this the Michael Scott. You guys ever watch The Office? Just talks and talks and talks, says nothing. More than one issue is included in a single message, which confuses the listener. Like I said before, when you're the foreman and you know that job backwards and forwards and slantways and frontways, you see that whole big picture. And a lot of times we can be laying out a task and then we start to overload. We start to give them too much information and it starts to confuse them. You gotta have an idea of when to cut it off one task at a time. It depends. It also depends on who you're laying it out to, right? Every foreman's gonna have their favorite son on the job. They're gonna have that individual that they can go to and they can give them this job and not worry that it's not going to get done properly. They know that that person can take some of the weight off their shoulders and they trust them. And then there's other people that you have to hold their hand and walk every step of the way. Illustrations or example used may not be appropriate to get the point across. Kind of comes back to the picture. People are going to perceive things differently. People are going to perceive things differently. The sender may unintentionally beat around the bush and never get to the point. We're just talking about Monday Night Football. And physical barriers. These are noise making hearing difficult. Communicate somewhere where it's more quiet. Listener may suffer from hearing loss. You might have to speak a little louder, a little clearer. The temperature is uncomfortably hot, uncomfortably cold. It's kind of the world we live in. The communication may be taking place where there's danger. Maybe there's someone doing a lift above your head, or welding above your head, or jackhammering, or CAD welding, or whatever the case may be. There might be distracting activities going by. There might be a car accident, or whatever. So you just want to be aware of those. Basically, you have two opportunities to impact communication: preparation and exchange. Okay? The single most important step in verbal communication is to verify that your message was understood as you intended it. As you intended. Make it a practice to check with your production team members to determine that they understand every part of every message you give them. There's really only one way to do it. But we don't do it. What do you think it is? Tell that. Correct. The only way you can find out what part of your message was understood is to have the listener repeat the message back to you. How many people do that? Do you really?
Yeah.
You lying?
No.
Don't lie.
Started with my kids. There you go.
I'll tell you what. It's your responsibility anyway. I think it's great that you do that. It's phenomenal. It's your responsibility anyway. I tell you what, if it goes in wrong, the owner's not going to come and find that journeyman. He's going to come to your office. So the weight's on your shoulders anyway, so put the onus back on yourself. All right? Be a little bit humble and say, hey, what's your name? Joe. Hey, Joe, I'm not always clear when I'm explaining things. Can you just repeat back to me what I'm looking for here so I can make sure we're on the same page? You will know immediately if the exchange of understanding has taken place or not. And you can fix it right then and there within a couple of minutes instead of 8 hours later and $1,000 worth of material. Okay?
I'll tell you, it does rub people the wrong way.
Say that again?
It does rub people the wrong way.
Oh yeah, I know it does. But put the onus back on yourself. Blame yourself. Say, hey, look, I'm not always clear what I want. Can you just repeat back to me what I'm looking for so I can make sure we're on the same page? Eat a little crow. It goes a long way. It goes a long way to be just a little bit humble in that position. Okay? You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything. But that is just one way of dealing with people that's a little softer to them. Instead of saying, I know you have no clue what I'm talking about. Can you tell me what I'm looking for? Right? It does help. Yeah, we don't, on a whole, we don't do it. On a whole, we don't do it. Sometimes as a foreman, you're asked to give or receive feedback. These are just some guidelines. I'm not going to go into a big thing on feedback here, but you always want to note the readiness of the receiver. You want to be descriptive, not interpretive. By that I mean you want to be a camera. You don't want to put your own spin on it. This is what I see, not what I think. Okay? It should always be used appropriately. Kind of stay away from obvious situations. Never demand change. You don't want to overload. Be helpful and keep it balanced. So basically, you're going to state what you want feedback about. The person's going to go do it. They're going to come back to you. Then you're going to check out what you heard. And then you and that individual get back together to share your reactions to the feedback. something like, hey, we got an add-on. Can you take a walk down this hallway and see what it would take to have 4 receptacles or a 3-way with 2 4-ways in between or whatever the case may be. And then you're going to go check it out and you and that individual have that conversation. Communicating in groups. It's really the same as one-on-one communication. You always want to be well prepared. You want to speak loudly and clearly, and you want to ask for questions. Are there any questions? There never are. And empowerment. How do we rule? Do we rule with a firm hand? Are we liberal? Are we somewhere in between the two? How do we handle that? Right? Some of the other great things I think he uses in there is the definition of teamwork. Did anyone pick up on that? Did anyone pick up on the definition of teamwork? Teamwork is when everyone is committed to each other's success. So if you looked at our industry, when the owner of the company is committed to the success of the estimators, when the estimators are committed to the success of the project managers, when the project managers are committed to the success of the supers, when the supers are committed to the success of the foreman, when the foremen are committed to the success of the journeyman, when the journeymen are committed to the success of the apprentices, when the apprentices are committed to the success of the CWs and Cs, and all the way back up the line. One person can't do it alone. He says it in there. We cannot win unless we all win. We got to create these units. Speaking of winning, I love that acronym. What's important now? We got to get this wire pull done. What's important now? What do we have to do to do it? You can answer that question. You'll get it done. Okay? Now, let me ask you this. Before I move on to leadership, and I have something I want to read on teamwork. Every team has a leader, correct? But does the team make the leader, or does the leader make the team? Let me give you an example. I can't use my normal example here because we're in Ohio, and most of you probably know who the head coach of the Browns is. Do you guys know who the head coach of the Browns is? Oh, good. Raise your hand if you know who the head coach of the Patriots is. I don't even know his name. You know who he is? Raise your hand if you know who the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers is. So does the team make the leader, or does the leader make the team? A little both. My point is, good leaders will give the teams the tools necessary to be successful. That and good upper management recruiting the right quarterback. Right. I want to read something on teamwork. This was written by my brother. We played college football in a small D2 school in southern West Virginia called West Virginia Wesleyan. We had a lot of great success. I was already graduated at this time. My brother had already graduated at this time, and our team was playing for a conference championship. And he wrote this letter. He played defensive back, and he wrote this letter to the defensive coordinator. And he just called it teamwork. It's great. From the moment you first put on a football helmet, before you ever play the game for the first time, an hourglass is turned upside down and the clock begins. You will never know when the sand will run out. Everything you do on and off the field from the time you are very young until this moment affects the speed in which the sand descends. During this time, most players allow the game to come and go without ever understanding why. Why they never had a chance to do something great. For me, the hourglass tipped over 15 years ago and the final grains of sand ran out on November of 2002. 11 years of football came down to the very last grain of sand before the game paid me back. As a player, the game comes and goes, the hourglass starts and finishes on every career, and it is up to the player to figure out how to win. I spent 11 years mostly on losing football teams and never even came close to winning a championship until the last minute of the last quarter of the last game I ever played. When the game pays you back, it's the happiest day of your life. However, the game will only pay you back if you understand truly how to play the game. It's not hard. It's really quite simple. The hard part is getting your team to buy into it. When you care more about the team's success than your own personal gains, when you stop looking at the game as a whole and start understanding that it's a simple execution of a single play, one at a time, trusting that your teammates are only focusing on their specific assignment, it is then that you begin to function as a winning unit. This is the only way to win. Most players go through this game fighting this truth, believing that their talents are bigger and better than the team as a whole, and the game leaves them with nothing. For the men left in this locker room, they're still seeing in your hourglass. I wish you the best of luck with what remains. I love that. If we started looking at our jobs in that same light, understanding that it's a specific assignment, it's a pipe run, it's a wire pull, it's a termination, and winning that day and winning that task, and focusing on your specific assignment that you're supposed to be doing that day, and not worried about what everybody else is doing, trusting that everyone else is focusing on their assignment. It is then that you're operating as a winning unit. You're operating as a team. You winning that day. If I'm going to do this wire pull, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. If I'm going to run this pipe run, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to focus on my task. I'm going to win this day. Break it down. It's an individual task every single day that brings the whole job in together. It's not the whole picture. It's a single wire pull. It's a single termination. It's hanging a single fixture, one at a time. Winning that day. Being as efficient as possible. Don't look at the big picture. We start doing the little things right, the big picture will start to take care of itself. Now, as a leader on the job site, and believe it or not, as a leader in this industry, I congratulate each and every one of you when you decide to become a foreman. You're taking on a lot of responsibility. A lot of responsibility. You're a true leader. You're putting yourself out there. You're taking that risk, right? So, name a person alive or dead that you consider as a good leader at any point in history. Any person. Give me a name. Abraham Lincoln. General Patton. Glad you said it. Give me a leader. Bill Clinton. Why'd you whisper? Bill Clinton. Give me a good leader. Living or dead?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Give me a good leader. Living or dead?
Jerry Bucko.
Who?
Jerry Bucko guy right over here.
Okay. Congratulations. Give me a good leader. Living or dead?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I really,
In all of history, there's been no great leaders?
I don't know.
How would you know if you don't know?
Yeah, exactly. If you're not underneath them, how do you really know how good of a leader they were?
Well, I mean, history speaks volumes. No.
He's telling the truth.
Give me a good leader, living or dead. Bo Schembechler, another Michigan fan. John Kennedy. All great leaders. What about Mahatma Gandhi? Good leader?
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi. Good leader? What about Dr. King? Good leader? What about Adolf Hitler? Good leader?
It's something right now, people follow them.
I'm not saying you have to agree with their politics. They led. What made them good leaders?
Communication, probably.
Communication.
Bring people together for a common cause.
Bring people together for a common cause. Maybe fear. People feared them. Right? So, I'm glad you brought up George Patton. A certain type of leader, right? Kind of led with a firm hand. So you have George Patton over here on the left, and you have Gandhi, a pacifist, on the right. Both strong leaders. Two extremely opposite leadership styles. So how do we know when to use the proper leadership style? Because here's the problem with being a leader. You can't treat every person the same. You can't treat every situation the same on the job. Our leadership style has to float from stern to know when to step back and maybe not be so much of a leader. It's got to float. There's a chart here. It's kind of generic. But basically, you just float along this line. Over here, leader makes a decision his way, that's it. No no consultation. Over here, he talks about why he made the decisions, or she made the decisions. There's a discussion, right? But it really comes down to being able to slide how much use of authority you use to areas of freedom for the crew. That's a terrible word. I took it out. Basically, oh, I don't want to do that yet. If you can answer this question, how do you judge people on your job? How do you judge them?
Attitude.
Parents and work ethic.
Attitude is right. Work ethic, attitude. We basically judge people on two broad. One of the best is I asked that question. How do we judge people on the job? And the guy goes, how they look. You should probably stay away from that. But we judge people, coaches. You ever coach your kids in T-ball or Little League or what have you, or you coached anything? We judge people on two broad topics. Attitude is one, what's the other? Say it? Ability. That's how we basically judge people. That's how we judge athletes. That's how we judge journeymen. How well can they do it? Can they do it, right? Are they coachable? Do they have a great attitude? Do they have a good ability? So if you can answer these questions, you can start to decide which leadership style is best, right? So if the problem is ability, they can't do something, then you're more directive. You have to show them how to do it. You can't bend a 90, this is how you bend a 90. You can't wire a three-way, this is how you wire a three-way, right? If the problem is more attitude, it gets a little tougher. It gets a little tougher. Because then you got to be a little bit more supportive. Because if a person's got a bad attitude, and you take that directive approach with them, you're probably going to turn that individual off or antagonize them. It's probably going to start a fight, to be honest with you, right? You have to be a little bit more supportive. You might have to find out, geez, I don't know what's going on with John. He's usually here every day at 7. All of a sudden, the past week, he's been coming in an hour late, 30 minutes late, every single day. Right? Now, here's the problem with leadership and discipline. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Whether you realize it or not, or this goes to shops as well, a shop or a foreman is going to treat a person that has been with that company longer, 10, 15, 20 years, differently than a person that just comes off the bench. If a guy's worked for me for 15 years and he starts showing up late, I'm probably not going to fire him. I'm going to have a conversation with him. If I just get a call, a guy out of the hall, and his first week that he's referred to me, he's late 3 times, that person's going to be treated a little differently, aren't they? Whether you realize it or not, you're playing favorites. You got to be extremely careful of doing it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it is a backdoor to favoritism. And once the crews feel that you play favorites, you've lost them. You've lost them. And that crew will either make you look like a god or bury you. If that crew is not going to work for you, you're in big trouble. And it's up to you to make sure you do that. The best way to do that is to this team environment that we're talking about. Right? So if you can ask these questions, ability or attitude, they need a report card. I said it before, we're very quick in this industry to point out the negative. We're very slow to point out the positive. Very slow to point out the positive. When it comes to discipline, let me ask you guys this. Of the guys that are running work now, how do you handle discipline now in your shop? How do you handle it? How many people have ever had to fire somebody? Can you share it with me?
I mean, it wasn't related, it wasn't here at Transtar where I work now, but I was in management the job before this, and yeah, I fired 5-10 people. I mean,
it's not an easy thing to do, is it?
No, it sucks. I mean, but
Terrible.
it's you or them essentially at the end of the day, and that was my easiest way to get through it.
Okay. Who else? Did you raise your hand? Can you share experience when you had to fire someone in the industry?
Yeah, in the industry, I've had to fire multiple people. And it's usually almost always actually is an attitude and or ability to show up more than the ability to, the ability to perform the work. That's hardly ever a problem.
I agree. it always comes down to mostly that attitude. So this is something that has been around for a long time. It's called the 4 behavior quadrants, right? And every person on your job will fall into one of these 4 quadrants. Every one, right? Obviously, the goal is to get everyone on your job in the quadrant 1. High ability can do it. High attitude will do it. Most people on your jobs are going to fall between 3 and 2. 2 and 3. So 2, they got a low ability, can't do everything yet. They have a great attitude. Who's likely going to fall into this quadrant? Apprentices, young journeymen, folks that haven't been jaded by the industry. And on the opposite end there, we got quadrant 3. High ability, they know how to do it, but their attitude is in the tank. Who's going to fall into that quadrant? Old timers, right? Maybe they've had a bad run of it, they've been unemployed, maybe they've worked for some bad contractors. They're just jaded. They're just sick of the industry. And unfortunately, some people might end up here in quadrant 4. Low ability can't do it, low attitude won't do it. Unfortunately, if you find yourself in quadrant 4, our industry can no longer support you. You're going to have to go. I always said, I've only had to fire one person when I was a foreman. And it was tough, because when you fire an individual, they can't collect unemployment, they're fired. I mean, they're terminated for a cause. I'm not talking about a one-man layoff where you can come down, sign the book, and go back out. When you're terminated, that's a big thing. And it's an unfortunate thing that we're going to have to start doing more of in our industry, because what's happening, or what I've seen happening through labor management and being involved in the CIR is eventually that individual is going to land with a contractor or land with a foreman that's not going to put up with that attitude or that ability, and they're going to fire him. And he's going to go down to the local and say, Mr. Business Manager, I have no idea why they fired me. I've never had a blemish on my record. I've never been fired before. And what the contractors did before was just pass that problem along. It's easier to give the layoff and pass the problem along than to fix the problem. And then Mr. Business Manager calls up the chapter manager and says, this is an unjust termination, there's been no documentation, da-da-da-da-da. What you can start to do, if I know one thing through my family in this industry is, if you ever drove around when he was alive, drove around with my grandfather around New Brunswick, New Jersey, there's not a building you can drive by where he wouldn't say, I wired that building. We do that building, right? They love it. They love to share what they know. They just don't like to do it anymore. So sometimes putting a 2 with a 3 can work, but it's got to be closely watched. What you hope would happen is his high ability will start to teach this individual with low ability. If we keep the attitude high, we now have a quadrant 1. But the opposite can happen, and it's got to be closely watched. Because if this attitude goes on this individual, then we got a quadrant 4. And when you're a young person in this industry that can't do shit and won't do shit, you're going to have a long career. I mean, you're not going to have a long career. Sorry. And you're going to end up here. All right? It's got to be closely watched. I would never put this up in the job trailer where everyone can see it. John comes in Monday morning, he's like, what the hell? Quadrant 4? Right? What do you mean I can't do anything? But it's a great way to look at your crew and start to evaluate them, right? And start to watch them. And if individuals constantly end up here, you can't support them anymore. It's too tight. Margins are tighter than ever. Our non-union competition, there's not a job in this country that we do that the non-union can't do. You know, I grew up as a kid saying, well, the non-union can't do that. They just do residential. If you would have told me when I started this career in the late 90s that there'd be non-union general contractors flying their flags with pride in Manhattan, I would have told you you're crazy. They're there. They're there. And it's really as a result of Hurricane Sandy. There was so much devastation and so much work that there was a need in the industry, and we couldn't man all the work. It's supply and demand. We couldn't man all the work that had to be done, so it opened the door. And once that non-union sticks their foot in that door, it's really hard to get them out. Really hard. Because like I said at the beginning of the class, most businesses today look at one thing, the bottom line. And the bottom line is we can't beat the non-union on people. We can't beat their price. Even with CWCs, even with the composite crew ratio, dollar for dollar, we can't get there. We can't get there. So we have to do it better. Nothing wrong with the wages we earn. There's nothing wrong with the benefits we earn. But when you demand a premium package, you must produce a premium product. You must produce a premium product. Otherwise, we're gone. It's over. It's over. And the biggest part comes with dealing with these individuals on the job. And it is one of the hardest things to do. It is one of the hardest things to do. Like I said at the beginning of this class, dealing with people is the hardest part about being a foreman. And if you have a strong need to be liked and loved, being a foreman might not be the job for you. It's like being president of the United States. No matter what you do, no matter if you're a D or an R, whatever you decide is going to piss half the people off. There's no winning. You'd have to be crazy to even want it. Well, the same thing can be said about foremen. You have to be crazy to even want it. But the fact remains, we need you. You are the utmost important people in this entire industry. You really keep the whole ball of wax moving. So do yourselves a favor. If you find people that are constantly here, constant problems, constantly late, constantly ripping out and redoing what they're doing, if you don't have the ability to fire that individual, you need to have that conversation with either your super, your project manager, or your owner, depending on the company you work for and how you're structured. Because unfortunately, our industry cannot. There was a time when we can hide these guys and say, here's a rod, count the threads. Get out of my face. We can't do that anymore. I've seen jobs where literally the guy would walk around with a 4-foot piece of cut pipe all day just looking pissed off. Because when you look pissed off, you look busy. That's all he did. The guy must have watched 10,000 steps a day. Did nothing. We can't do it anymore. We can't. We're going to talk about cost here in a little bit. The margins are so tight. Our competition is so fierce. Think about it in sports. If you can't match competition in a game, what happens? You lose. Guys, we can't match competition right now. And we're losing. Not my numbers, IBW numbers. 70% of what we would call our work is controlled by the non-union. We control 30%. So I'm sure you guys have all heard the adages, that's our work. They're doing our work. I think we're doing their work. Think about it. 70% of our work is non-union. We control 30%. Those are scary numbers. Those are really scary numbers. And we just can't afford to pass problems along anymore. And believe me, for the contractors who are in the room, I'm sure Russ could tell you stories. When you fire someone and you have to go through that labor management process of an unjust termination, it's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass. And the foreman's probably asked to come in. Remember this. When I negotiate a contract for NECA chapters, or if it gets to me, or when a chapter manager negotiates a contract or collective bargaining agreement against the IBEW, or with the IBEW, I should say, not against. The business manager is negotiating for his best guys. We're negotiating for your worst. Because no matter what, that's what I have to pay the worst guy. I can pay overscale to the guys that are great, but that minimum scale I have to pay. And let's be honest, is everyone the same in the IBEW? It really used to piss me off. That was one of the biggest things that pissed me off when I worked in the trade. It didn't matter if I put up 300 foot of pipe a day and this guy put up 10. At the end of the day, he got the same amount as I got. So what's that do to these guys over here? They're like, well, why am I going to bust my ass? And then the whole industry starts to tank. That whole attitude, that's got to change. We can't have that anymore. We can't float these individuals in. And I know some of these guys. Some of these guys are my friends, my brothers, my sisters. There's a lot of young faces in this room that have a long way to go in this industry. Probably 30 plus years or something. Ask yourself the question, if we keep going the way we're going, is this industry going to be around in 30 years? The industry will be there, but who people are hiring might change a little bit. So this is a serious thing. This is something you got to take serious. This is the hardest part about being a foreman. There's nothing pretty about this. It's about doing what's right for the industry. It's about doing what's right for your local. It's about doing what's right for your contractor. It's about doing what's right for our customers. Because at the end of the day, no customers, I don't give a shit if you make $100 an hour. If we got no one to work for, 100 times 0 is 0. Right? Have any of you guys ever experienced any problems with people on the job? You had to deal with the time I had to fire someone, I mean, it was literally cut and dry. The hardest part of it was the business manager's nephew. I was a foreman on a Goldman Sachs data project, and we were doing a walkthrough. And it was the building manager, the owner, the customer, my boss, the owner of Scholes Electric, Tom Dimsack, and a couple of PMs on the job. And we're walking in the data center, and I see 2 floor tiles open. Tom Dimsack, the owner of the company, goes, "Why are those floor tiles open?" I said, "I don't know." I go over, I look in, he follows me. I look down on the floor, 2 guys sitting under the floor, right by the crack unit, nice air-conditioned spot, drinking Budweiser. Right in front of the customer, right in front of the owner. I had no choice. They told me to get their shit, get the hell off the job. I'd mail the check to the shop, to the hall. Right? Then I had to pick up the phone and call the business manager. "Mr. Egan, this is Jay Jones. How are you?" "Oh, I'm good, Jay. What's up?" "Well, I had an incident today at the job. Had to fire Brian." "Why?" "Well, I caught him drinking on the job site." Yeah, it's a tough conversation. He wasn't happy. He said, "What do you mean drinking?" I said, "Well, it wasn't water, Joe." He said he was drinking Budweiser under the floor. I said, "Tom saw him." You know, it's never pleasant. Brian's a friend of mine to this day. We went through apprenticeship together. Great guy, made a mistake. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than friendship. Take ownership of those jobs. Take ownership of those jobs. It's not easy to do what you guys do every day. It's not easy to do what you guys do every day. Remember this. Well, even before, well, we can do this. This is a great quote. Any guys ever hear of Simon Sinek? He does a lot of TED Talks. Really cool guy. Leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. Give them the tools to be successful. We need them to be successful. But don't let them make chumps out of you either. Don't let them take advantage of you. Don't ever mistake kindness for weakness. Okay? Don't ever mistake kindness. You can be the nicest guy in the world. Kind. Don't ever mistake that for weakness. Urban Meyer has a saying that he uses. I just read one of his books. It's called Above the Line. Great book. If there's any Ohio State fans in here. I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I respect the hell out of Urban Meyer. He's got an equation. It's called E plus R equals O. It's not Ohm's law. Anyone know what that stands for? I promise you it's not Ohm's law. We're not going to do any Ohm's law.
What was it again?
E plus R equals O. It's an equation that events or something's going to happen plus your reaction is going to equal an outcome. And there's only one thing you can control in that equation. What is it?
Reaction.
Your reaction. For example, if you come home from work and your wife says, "Honey, I'm pregnant," and you react, "Is it mine?" You're going to get a certain outcome. Right? As opposed to, "Oh, that's great, you've been trying, this is awesome, can't wait." You're going to get a different outcome. Control your emotions, control your reaction, create your own outcomes. Okay? It's just a nice thing to keep in your mind. Shit happens every day. I tell this to my kids all the time. Stuff's going to happen in school. Billy's going to say something, Johnny's going to say something, whatever the case may be. Control your reaction. That's the only thing you can control in anything. You know, I fly and I travel a lot. I don't know if any of you guys do that. So I deal with the TSA on a weekly basis. And there's times I want to take these short little shits and stuff them right through that damn machine. Right? But I have to control my reactions, right? I create my own outcome, have a nice, easy travel day. People are crazy. People are crazy. All you gotta do is turn on the news to understand how crazy people are. Control your reaction. Okay? Remember, it's not about being the boss. It's about taking care of the people that we're in charge. It's about giving them the tools to make them successful. Now, how do we do that? Well, now it gets really hard. We're going to talk about motivation. This is by far. You guys need a break? Yeah? Well, let's take 10 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes. Good idea. I want to read something to you guys. And, what's your name? I want Brian to share a story he just told me. So this is interesting. Like I said, I don't like reading out books a lot, but this is pretty good. How effective is the heavy reliance on verbal communication? Research has proven that when people try hard to listen, they absorb about half of what they hear. After a week, people remember only about 20% of what they absorbed initially. Based upon these facts, we can only assume that people will remember 10% of any message after a week. That is provided they listen carefully in the first place. You guys know what that means? I'm completely wasting my time here. I had a guy challenge me on that in New York City. He said, I don't believe that. Right? And I said, okay. And when I do the class in Manhattan, we do it from 4 to 7, 2 nights in a row. Right? So we came in, I said that, he said, I don't believe that. And I said, okay. We came in the next night and I said, what's the definition of communication? What's the definition of communication? Exchange of understanding. He had no clue, he couldn't remember. And I said, yeah, that's obviously wrong. So, anyway, you know, we were telling the story about communication and what can happen on a job. I wasn't a foreman then. I think I was like a 5th-year apprentice. And we were doing a data center in Carteret, New Jersey. And there's 4 rigid 90s coming up out of the deck. And over here are 4 pulling troughs. 4 foot by 6 inch pulling troughs, right? Foreman comes up to this kid. The kid was in my apprenticeship class actually. And said, hey, John, take those 4 troughs, put them on the wall, come out the top 90. Common sense would tell you which way would those troughs have to go? Horizontal or vertical? Guess what he did? It looked like a damn Tetris game. There was the pipe, you had 6 inches to pull. Foreman blew a gasket. Do you know whose fault that was? Foreman's. I mean, look, the kid is 3 fries short of happy. It happens all the time. Share the story with that you just shared with me.
Well, so it was getting towards the end of a project, and the superintendent had told me that I needed to get these piles of cardboard from the 2x4 lights on the job site. And, but to save some of them and put them on the tables, all the countertops to protect them. So I've been walking down the hall and noticed that the cardboard was gone, some was laid on the tables. So I thanked the 2 guys nearest to me, you know, for getting rid of that stuff. And the one guy just perceived, like I said, thank you for taking that cardboard out. He perceived that in the highest form of sarcasm and just blew a gasket. Started yelling at me, got within a foot of my face, waving his finger, just screaming at me. Turned out he didn't take the cardboard out, another guy did it.
Anybody else have any stories on the job where the exchange of understanding fell short, created an issue? All? None of you? You guys are all great communicators. Okay. Writing reports. So, part of being a foreman is you're going to do a lot more writing, right? You're going to be sending reports back, as-bills, job progress. How many of you in this room keep a daily job log? Great. If you're not, I highly, highly suggest you start. And it's for no other reason than your own protection, right? Like I said, when shit hits the fan on the job, the owner or the project manager or whoever supervisor you're working for is not going to go to the crew. They're coming to your door. They're coming to knock to you because you're the foreman, right? And then they say, why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? You can look at your job log. It might not have anything to do. The plumbers were in there. The plumbers are behind. The wall wasn't fitted out. The wall wasn't studded out yet. Whatever the case may be, just little notes you just want to put down, like the temperature. Was it sunny? Was it raining? Who was absent? Who was there? Right? Little stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, if your contractor you're ever working for ever gets into a collections issue, the foreman's journal or job log, if it's in blue or black ink, or today it can be electronic, that's admissible in court. It's admissible in court as evidence, and if you help a contractor get paid through collections, you made a friend, right? It's important that when we write, though, I'm a terrible writer. I didn't feel I was a good writer. I didn't feel I could express my words on paper, and I always overthought it. Keep it simple. Use simple words. Think about what you want to write. Think about the person you're writing to. Take your time. The point here isn't to be considered an English teacher, but to get your point across, right? We have a NICA chapter manager in one of my chapters who is brilliant writer. The only problem is you have to have a thesaurus next to you to read anything he writes. He's missing the mark. So in my area, it's part of the IBW 3rd District. He's retired now. There's a new international vice president. But the international vice president at the time was this guy named Don Siegel. Some of you in the room might know Don. He was a character to say the least. He was from Reading, Pennsylvania. He was about this high and had the biggest Napoleon complex you'd ever want to think of. Powerful man, big position. He calls me one day, and only as Don could say it is, what the hell does this son of a bitch want? And he sends me the letter, and he emails it over to me. I said, Don, I have no idea. I have no idea. Don never even read it, missed the mark. Know your receiver. As a matter of fact, when the CWCE stuff all came out, like the Sunrise Sunset video, what, 2005-ish? 2007? When did that all? 2007. When that all came out, that was Ed Hill, or IBW's concept. NICA kind of ran with it, and they did this huge study. And they sit down with Ed Hill and Jerry Westerholm to discuss about implementing it. And if any of you guys are on Facebook, Ed Hill got filleted on Facebook over CWC. And they take the program, this isn't it, this is just a prop. They take the program out and they hand it over to Ed. And he picks it up and he looks at it and he's flipping it around like this. Goes like that. You know what he was looking for? You know what he was looking for? Union bug. Didn't use a union printer. Ed Hill never read it. Think about your audience. Think about your audience. Think about your audience. All right? Keep it simple. Plan your writing. Oops, I'm backwards here. Plan your writing. Use simple words. The idea is to get your point across, not to impress anyone. Okay? Team building and leadership. What's the definition of communication? Let's say it with a little more conviction. What's the exchange of understanding? I'm like, what's the definition of communication? Exchange of understanding. Make sure that takes place. Put the onus back on yourself. Tell them you're not that great at explaining things. And if you could just please repeat back to me what I was looking for. It'll make such a difference. The other part about being a foreman is building a team environment on the crews of your work. Right? For this, someone has always said it better. I have a video. It's about 20 minutes long. I'm not going to lie to you. It's dated. It's from like 88, 89. And it's Lou Holtz. It's called Do Right 2. And it's about team building and the team concepts they use at University of Notre Dame. I am not a Notre Dame fan. I'm a Mountaineer fan. Actually, Notre Dame, there's some Michigan people in here. Notre Dame is playing Michigan in this game that we're going to watch here in a second. But it's kind of funny. I found myself starting to root for Notre Dame. My quarterback in high school is this kid named Mike Elko. And some of you guys might have saw on Barstool Sports, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame giving a pep talk to the defense before the Miami game. Did anyone see that? Anyone saw it? They didn't listen to him. But anyway, that's my buddy Mike Elko. He's the D coordinator at Notre Dame now. And they got smashed by Miami. But that happens. But anyway, it's about a 20-minute video, and it really explains the 4 fundamentals of teamwork better than anything I've ever seen. I really hope that there's something that comes out a little newer, a little fresher. But right now, in my opinion, these 4 fundamentals of teamwork have not changed in hundreds of years, and he explains them the best. So we'll watch this, and then we'll carry on here. Do Right 2 with Lou Holtz. Sorry about the sound quality.
Notre Dame to football. It's fumbled almost immediately. And Michigan recovers. Michigan with the ball, second down and 10. The pass and looking deep. He's got a man in the end zone. Touchdown, Michigan. Michigan has been methodical. Straight ahead, big hole, down inside the 15 to the 10 to the 4-yard line. Now from the wall, around the left side, touchdown, Michigan, 17-14, Wolverines. This game seems to be slipping away from Notre Dame. Notre Dame straight ahead, third quarter now. Ball pops loose again. Michigan all over it, Michigan football. To the outside goes Michigan. The Wolverines to the sideline, to the 5, touchdown, Wolverines. 24-14 Michigan. Notre Dame has lost control. This game may be all over, but Coach Lou Holtz, look at him. He's telling his team we can't cut back. Did you see it? He said they're coming back.
Notre Dame, we take great pride in our ability to overcome virtually all problems and obstacles in order to be successful. Naturally, I can't assure you that we'll win every game, but I can promise you the will to win in a positive environment would be obvious to even the most novice fan. Winning in football here at Notre Dame is just like being successful in business. Your business requires teamwork and a belief in common philosophy. In Do Right, I talked about our philosophy, which is really quite simple. We have 3 fundamental rules. The Do Right rule. Do what's right and avoid what's wrong. Be totally committed to excellence. And the golden rule. Treat other people the way you would like to be treated. There are 3 questions that everybody asks me. Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? Do you care about me? This is our philosophy. But philosophy is only the foundation. To succeed in business in the 1990s, we must consider a growing list of factors which foster teamwork. The common goal, communication, diversity, and empowerment. This is what Do Right 2 is all about.
We practice teamwork at Notre Dame every day. Teamwork is a cornerstone of every successful organization. The most fundamental element of teamwork is a sense of purpose, a clear, strong, and common goal.
I'm a great believer in goal setting. When our football team came back, we talked about winning the national championship. And I want to tell you, what a tremendous enthusiasm because we're all on the same page. We had teamwork, we had togetherness, we had people working together for one common cause. Then what happened, ladies and gentlemen? We went out to practice the second day and it wasn't good. The third day practice got worse. And each day it got worse, and by the 10th practice, we weren't getting a bit better. Because everybody had their own agenda. All they wanted to do was endure practice. They were tired, they were hot, they were worn out. And you can't have a group of people working together if you don't have a common cause. And when all they want to do is get through the day, you aren't going to get a thing done. Finally, I called them together. I said, I know you're tired and worn out. I said, we played Michigan our opening game. We aren't going to out-coach Bo. Bo Schiffer's a great coach. They're a great athlete. We aren't getting any better at practice. I called Bo and said, Bo, why don't you give your players a day off? I'll give ours a day off. Bo said, no. I said, I'm not taking a day off, but Michigan's practice, we got to practice. Bo told me to go practice 2 hours. We're going to practice 2.5. We did. We had good practice. Why? They went back to the sense of work. Now, the next day, I said, that works yesterday, so I called him up. I said, man, I called Bo today. Looked at me a little funny, they said, what Bo said? I said, Bo, your players beat up sore. He said, yeah, I said, we are too. I said, let's not scrimmage today. Let's put them out in shorts. Bo said, no, he's going to scrimmage. I don't want to scrimmage him, but that's what Michigan's going to do. That's what competition's going to do. We have a sense of purpose. That's what we have to do. I said, don't get mad at me. You remember this now when you see Bo on September 14th. They gave you the Oh, we had a great practice. Why? Sense of purpose. All of a sudden, we encourage one another, work together, help one another for a common cause. And it worked, so I did it for about 5 straight days. Every day I started off by saying, I called Bo today. 5th day I walked out, before I could say a word, one of our players said, hey, Coach, I called Bo today. I said, what did Bo say? And he said, Bo said his players eat steak and lobster, you know, so. But if you have a sense of purpose, it changes everything. You two have got to compliment one another, and you've got to do your job so he can do his. What is teamwork? Teamwork is when everybody is committed to each other's success. Our linemen have to be committed to the success of the tailback. Tailback got to be committed to the success of the defense. Where you get everybody work together, and the more difficult the situation, the more people want to go their own way, do their own thing, and be an individual. There we are with 10 minutes to go in the game. We're behind by 10 points, 30-20. Southern Cal had the ball 4th down and 5 at midfield, went into punt formation. I decided at that time the best thing we could do is put on a punt rush, block the punt, pick it up, run in for a touchdown. We put on a punt rush, we did not block the punt. However, we were very successful roughing the punt. Now, the young man who runs the punter happened to be my wife's son. At a critical time, my own son made the dumbest decision I'd ever seen. Now, I always thought he was a rather intelligent individual, but he did not exhibit any intelligence at this time. Because had he exhibited intelligence, he would have walked off the field on the Southern Cal sideline. They come off the field, I was so frustrated the whole year. He got to the hash mark, I hollered, tell my lunch, I said, what happened? He said, did you see it? By the time I got my fingers up his jugular vein, Southern Cal got the automatic first down and went on to score to make the score 37-20 with 9 minutes to go in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, the third day down about what attitude can do to a football team. I wish you'd been on the sideline at that time. For the first time since I've been at University of Notre Dame, we had a team. We had a group of people working together. We had a group of people committed to the same cause. I don't know whether they were embarrassed, they just skipped and rushed the punter. I don't know what it was. But I do know this, that all of a sudden we came together. We didn't have seniors and sophomores and freshmen. We had a Notre Dame football team, and for the first time they came together and made up their mind that they weren't going to walk off the field. I don't know whether they were embarrassed, but they got rid of all the excuses why we could win. They banded together in the last 9 minutes of the football game. University of Notre Dame scored 19 points. We won the football game 39-37. Since that time, University of Notre Dame has won something like 40 football games and lost 4. Same athlete, same coach. The difference is the attitude and understand that sometimes things aren't going to go well, but if you get enough people care, you get everybody to work together, you really and truly have a chance. I want to give you one key word, and the word win. The word win stands for what's important now. You say, this is what we want to do, this is our sense of purpose, what's important now. That's all you got to do. This is what we got to do, what's important now to get that done. You don't sit around, you don't say, boy, I hope that happens. Hope we win the national championship, hope we win this game. Hope this happens, that happens, hope your customers come in. What's important now? We want to get customers in there, what's important now? Tell you what you have to do. Good job.
Goals are the foundation of teamwork. Effective communication is our way of translating these goals. Individuals and organizations cannot expect to succeed unless they clearly communicate their goals to employees and customers alike.
Hey, Aaron, thank you for Tracy. It's a team game up front, man. Team game.
Communication builds understanding, a sense of worth and importance. Communication encourages spirit and togetherness. Good communication ensures that everyone is part of the team.
Communication means they have to understand when they're doing something right and when they're doing something wrong. They got to get a report card, so to speak, how they're doing. Communication means the Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, because we should listen twice as much as we speak. We went up and played Michigan State. Had a fine football team. We're behind 20-18, 3 minutes to go in the game. We have the ball inside their 25-yard line. All we got to do is kick a field goal. But no, I thought we could score a touchdown. So I called the team over. I said, we're going to run on a pass. We're going to run right 324 athletic speed pass. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that means absolutely nothing to you. What I did not realize at the time, though, was it meant absolutely nothing. Our quarterback,
Good communication, as it relates to teamwork, means that we're open to the ideas of others. In business as in football, teamwork depends on utilizing the individual and diverse talents of everyone in your organization.
You can't have teamwork if people don't treat each other like they would like to be treated. I tell our athletes this today, that you cannot live in a black society. You can't live in a white society. You can't live in a Hispanic society. You can't live in an all-male world. You can't live in an all-female world. The world has changed. If you're going to be successful in life today, you've got to be able to communicate with everybody. There you go. When our freshmen come in, they come in from all over the country. We will have them from different backgrounds, different economic backgrounds, with all different religious beliefs, with all different political beliefs, with all different aspirations. We have offensive players, we have defense. We have big, we have small, we have fast, we have slow. We all come together for a team. We all understand that every man's important. We understand we care about one another, we help one another. All the way along the line. We're a team. We're family. And he in turn is going to have a black history period, or have Hispanic. And above somebody else is going to be a woman. This is just the way life is. You have to be able to work together. And you can't do it if you don't treat everybody the way you would like to be treated. They're in the business, or in the country, or in an organization, or in a football team that can't be turned around. The love and the feeling within it. When you love one another, teamwork's easy. You find 100 things in this place about everybody, but you gotta find reasons to like one another and have that common goal. Bring it together. We like to think we're the best team in the nation, but that's up to you. Whether we'll be outstanding or not will be dependent upon the people here, and not because of your athletic ability, but how well we come together, how well we work together, how well we support one another, and how well we accept our role. Not everybody's going to be an All-American. Not everybody will be first team. But everybody is important to our future, and that includes this year.
And anytime we play anybody, I show tremendous respect, right?
When you have a goal or sense of purpose, when you communicate and share your goal, and when you draw on the individual talents and strengths of those you work with, then you can empower your team members to make their own decisions, confident that they will be in the best interest of your organization.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a football coach at the University of Notre Dame, I look upon it like I am running 15 to $20 million business, 200 employees. Count the athletes, the secretaries, and everybody else. We've got to have everybody in that entire organization understand that they are important and the role they play is of absolute critical importance. I want my secretary to believe that she is vitally important when she is.
Number one, on hiring, they give the first, they want to see me on the air, other than rely on your leadership. Very good. If you ever have a problem, come see me. If you don't see us, then we don't have a problem. And always come and bring the problem written down. If I have it written down, then what do you think the possible solutions are? By the time you get that done, you'll find that there is a sense of normally come see me. So if you don't tell you,
See, everybody talks about empowerment. Everybody talks about when you run with the firm handed, you give people the authority to do things. Ladies and gentlemen, when you have 200 people under you, offensive coordinators, defensive line coach, running back coach, receiver coach, strength coach, I've got to say to them, you have to make decisions, because I'm not going to be there to make every single one of them. But they can do it because they understand, number one, what our sense of purpose is, what we're trying to do. They understand what we're trying to do. And number two, they are going to make a decision that they feel is right. They're going to make a decision that's going to enable us to be totally committed to excellence. And they're going to make a decision based on treating other people the right way. So when they understand what our sense of purpose is, they understand what our rules are, then we have no difficulty in being able to make a decision. If they have a question of those three, they will come at me, Coach, I got a little problem, I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. But if they know what the right thing to do is, and they know that'll help us be committed to excellence, and they know that that helps us show people care about it, they make the decision. They know what my decision would be. The reason people don't have any initiative and don't get involved and act like robots is because they don't understand what their sense of purpose is. They don't understand what they're trying to do. Or the philosophy is so complicated they can't interpret it. Or the philosophy changes every single week. You get a new manager and the philosophy changes. Then the next week another manager applies. Nobody knows what it is. That's why I say, if you do what's right, do the best you can, treat others like you treat, it allows people to use your initiative. And everybody is making the decision predicated a bit on the same thing. It's not easy to play defense. And yet it takes 11 guys and we're not getting that on a consistent basis. It's not enough to say, well, I made the tackle 8 yards down. It's no nonsense. Hey, if they're down 27, they're going to trail pass it. And have to get the pass interference. Other 10 guys did a great job. He whatever, it doesn't matter. That's what life's all about. I don't care whether you're in business or whether you're coaching football, whether you're playing football. Unless you've got a golf club or a tennis racket, it's a team game. And when you as a practice, you have an obligation to other people to do that the right way. Because we cannot win unless everybody wins. We realize that we're going to continue to be successful here at Notre Dame. We must understand it isn't just me, the coaching staff, or even the athletic ability of our players. Oh, certainly we have good players, good coaches, good managers. We also believe in ourselves and what we do. There's no doubt we feel we're going to be successful. But without the fundamental of teamwork, we don't have a chance.